I mean, we've been in existence as a country for like 248 years. We've had a lot of terrible presidents. None of them have been convicted of a crime in a criminal court until a few minutes ago. We just had to get started on this podcast. So it's Gideon here and Matt.
I'm here. We are just diving in loosey-goosey, naked.
Totally.
We just got this news. It's, I think I predicted that it wouldn't happen. You predicted that it would.
Oh, that's right. That's
but
right.
I think we're both still, the gravity of it hits now that
It's
has
shocking.
happened. Yeah.
And I remember we were talking about OJ a few weeks ago because he died. And it's like, as big as that trial seemed, I mean, this is bigger, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
this is
that's
way
gonna
bigger.
people won't know who OJ is in like 40 years, but like a president getting convicted of a crime, that's as Biden said, that's a big frigging deal. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah. I mean, this will be in fifth grade textbooks, maybe, right? And that means it's big news.
Unless Trump wins, and then it won't be. Then it'll be in the textbooks. It'll say it was rigged, of course.
Right. Or they'll just get burnt. And
he said, and he spoke after the verdict. And to be clear, he's guilty on all 34 of these counts. Which
every single one.
Yeah, and but he says the real verdict will be in November. So I guess this one doesn't count.
Yeah, I mean, well, it does count for something, right? But what are the actual consequences going to be, right? That's what we're all thinking now.
That's a great question. And I mean, the one thing that it does count for is that Biden can call Trump an ex-con. He is a convict.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you want to vote for a convicted criminal? That is the case the Biden-Harris team can make.
A flat-out felon we're talking about.
Felon.
He's been convicted of felonies. Like,
jeez,
many of them. And so you said that he's going to be the verdict. I'm not the verdict, but the sentencing is going to be in July 11th. Did you say
something like that near Bastille Day, which seems kind of appropriate?
It does.
I think
I'm gonna not though, right?
Well, yeah, true. And I think I'm gonna have to go to if I'm free, I'm going to go down to the courthouse because that is going to be a scene.
Yeah, my brother-in-law was there for the announcement today.
Oh my
God!
Outside,
he was excited because he was the first one to yell guilty.
Oh my God! What was he there for?
He's just, I guess, his office. He's a lawyer, and his office was nearby, so he's like, he saw it, and he went down there. But he said there is like a Trump section, and he stayed away from the Trump section.
And they were lighting off fireworks in my neighborhood. And
were they really?
Somebody on Facebook said they were car horns were being honked, I think, in Montclair. So maybe not in Staten Island or Orange County, California, or Iowa, but
or deep South Brooklyn either, where I'm from. There are lots of conservative little enclaves in New York that people probably don't know about. But they are probably unhappy about it. But I think it's not even a matter of unhappiness because I think it's going to invigorate a lot of people to come out and support Trump.
Definitely give money for sure. It's going to motivate that, 31% his base?
Right. But I think it also excites the Biden folks, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, we'll have time to talk about the consequences. I think the big shock of the verdict is just like, it's hard to get your head around, as you said. And it's like, wow, man, Alvin Bragg. Imagine if you're a baseball player and go 34 for 34. You know what I mean?
It's true.
And as I said in an early podcast episode, that Stormy Daniels, I mean, she could go down in history as kind of a hero, sort of heroine.
Maybe she'll be on a coin.
There you go. They could get rid of who are they going to get rid of? I don't know.
The pennies.
Jefferson.
Him too. The nickels.
Yeah. I think Washington is on a lot of coins. So he could lose the nickel. Is he on the nickel or is that Jefferson?
I think it's Jefferson on the nickel.
Who uses hard currency these days anyway?
I know. No one.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so is he going to go to prison? Is that going to happen?
That's a great question.
How could he not if he's guilty of all these charges, right? He has to get a prison term of some length. Unless, I guess they could give him just probation.
Right, or like a giant fine.
That's so... a giant fine is so...
anticlimactic.
Anything but that. Even just a month in prison or 2 weeks is better
That'd
than
be
some
great.
fine.
And an ankle bracelet.
Oh, that would
if
be
he
great.
is on probation. I mean, the one thing I wish I understood, being a non-lawyer, is like, I mean, is there a possibility of him not having to fulfill his sentence at all until after the appeal? Like, will the consequences be pushed completely after he appeals the case?
That's a good question. Yeah, because I don't know what happens once you're convicted. I would imagine there's going to be some changes to your life.
Right.
Like you can't. Like, what if he wins?
Leave the country.
Right? Can he not leave the country?
Well, if he wins, yeah, that's a great question. I have no idea.
Well, because I would think even if you're, if you're charged with something, are you even allowed to leave the country? I don't think so, right?
I doubt it. I mean, unless there's a thing where if you're not a flight risk, they will allow it. But I can't imagine any convict would be allowed to leave the country.
Right, because he is a flight risk. Like, at this point, certainly.
Well, that's another, yeah.
I mean, you could say he's not because he's going to be so everyone knows who he is. He can't hide, but that doesn't mean he's not a flight risk.
Well, here's another interesting angle. I mean, obviously this is not federal court, so he cannot pardon himself for this one. He will have to, if he loses the appeal, he'll have to do whatever the sentence is, and he can't really do squat about it. But is there a situation where there's some sort of negotiation where they say he can leave the country and get taken in by, like, Putin and Russia in exchange for sort of, like, dropping out of the race and becoming irrelevant? Is that, like, complete... That's never going to happen, right?
Well, I just don't think he would go for it.
But don't you think he wants to get out of... Like, if his sentence is, like, 10 years of jail, if that's even possible, I mean, don't you think that would terrify him?
I don't know. I feel like he maybe just doubts that he'll face any consequences.
Maybe.
I mean, I personally still doubt he's going to face any real consequences.
Well, if he wins, right, the appeal's going to take forever. So there's no way there'll be an appeal for a couple of years. So he does, when he says that the verdict is in November, he's kind of right. But I do think the political consequence of being called a convict, that's the real punishment, at least right now.
I guess. Is it though, or is it a boon? It might be a boon to him ultimately.
I wonder. I can't imagine he sees it that way. Like when he spoke in the hallway, I mean, he did look pretty like serious and like.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like he could hide the fact that he was kind of freaked out. I don't know.
Yeah. They
Maybe
said he was scowling and frowning before, that he'd been laughing. And then they said, "Oh, the jury's back," and he started frowning.
Right.
Laughing and eating pizza.
And
probably with a fork and knife.
Closing his eyes.
Yeah, well, he was also just complaining that, like, oh, so few people. He said 5 or 6% of the vote he had won, which I guess I thought it was more like 10% of the vote, but that's still crazy to win such a low percentage. Even 10%, I think it was, in 2016, to win that much in your home district is insanity. But, how can you complain about that? It's not like we're trucking you off to the South or something where he'd obviously have done a lot better. But this is supposed to be the jury of your peers. This is where you're from.
Right. And he was living there at the time of when all this went down.
And he spins himself as a New Yorker. That's part of his shtick. So it's not like...
And there have been some polls lately in New York State
Yeah.
That where it's like less than 10 points, where he's
Really?
down, but it's actually fairly close. So it's a little, once you get above like the Catskills,
Yeah.
it does get like kind of like, I don't know, can I say rednecky? Is that like really insulting?
I think it's okay. It's
Yeah.
just us.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, it does. It gets red quick up there. And I guess the island, too, is probably, at least Nassau and most of
Long
Suffolk.
Island.
I guess once
That's
you get...
very Donald
Yeah.
Trump. Like
I guess
Suffolk.
once you get out to the tip, it probably gets blue again.
I don't know. That's a great point. I'm not positive about that. There are a lot of Trumpies, even like the people who are the fancy, stockbroker boys who go out to the Hamptons.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, that's something people still sort of have this idea of like, oh, the poor people who vote for Trump. But
Yeah.
it's not really true. If you look at the stats,
No.
it's really the poor people vote Democrats mostly. Like people under $50,000, pretty much they're going for Dems by huge numbers. And it's not until you get to the people who are making over 100K where it's Republican.
That's interesting.
So it's not as much as people spin it as like, oh, we should feel bad for these simple folk who vote. I mean, they might be simple, but they're not poor,
Right. I think there's like a stereotype of a Trump voter that isn't necessarily every voter. It's a broad generalization, as I say. I mean, my late mother voted for Trump, so she definitely didn't fit into the stereotype.
No, I mean, there's a lot of people who are just conservative in their bones. It really
And
does
they're
seem
just
kind of
angry,
genetic.
too, about, like,
Right.
Politicians are, like, easy to hate. And the system is, too. But, like, to vote for an authoritarianism, a kind of dictator, just because
Yeah.
the system isn't working the best.
Are
Doesn't
you
seem worth
prepared?
it.
Are you prepared
For,
for the Civil War coming up?
Right. That movie's going to come true. Did you see Civil War?
I didn't. Do you?
I did.
What'd you
thought
think?
it was pretty good. It's on stream. I think it's at least video on demand, but I think it's streaming now, and it's like one of the top things that's streaming.
Did you see yourself as this particular character in it? Are you one of the journalists, or?
It's a
We're
good
doing
question.
kind of comedy journalism on this Civil War. We're looking for a good take, but
Right. I mean, I could see it, but I do have some like minor versions of like walking into like very scary situations. All of us, if you've been out in
Sure.
the field, you definitely run into some crazy people where you're like, am I going to die here?
yeah. What is something specific you're thinking of, or just
No, not really. Just in general, where where you're in an unfamiliar place and things kind of take an ugly turn in what you're trying to film, and you're just like, oh boy, yeah. But
I just don't want to be on the
obviously-
front lines, I just
No.
There's got to be things for us to do, like
I would
strategy.
think so.
Maybe they need like some writer for like propaganda stuff.
That's a great idea. Well, there should be a satire. I think, you look at like Egypt and like all these countries that have like a lot of big problems, and they all have satire. I think satire works even in,
I guess so.
war-torn countries.
Yeah, I get. Is Egypt about to have a coup again, or
Oh,
some
I
sort
don't
of
know.
uprising? I don't know. I saw a little bit about that happening on Twitter recently, but
boy.
it might have been misinformation. Who knows?
It's
Or it may have been
possible.
very contained sort of situation.
Anyway, I think we should actually wrap up because we just wanted to get on the air and give our gut reactions. We're going to do a longer episode tomorrow
Sounds good.
because there'll be a lot more to talk about. But we wanted to do a very special episode, so to speak.
quick hit.
And I also want to remind people to like and, follow or subscribe to this podcast so that, we can reach more people.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe.
Yo, true dat. All right. Well, the plan is to come back tomorrow and do a full episode, but this has been really interesting living through these crazy times.
Yep, interesting. One could say.
Oh, right. Interesting. That's the titular word, so to speak.
So to speak.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Talk
See
to
you soon. Bye bye.
See you, everyone.